The story begins with a woman named Amber, who is an Arab heiress. However, she has always been arrogant about her wealth, not giving much importance to those inferior to her. This attitude has kept her from forming many connections. One day, Amber and her companions take a trip to a private yacht. The captain warmly greets everyone, but Amber, showing little interest, walks inside without shaking hands. As we know her nature, she remains indifferent. During this time, we also see a man named Mike, responsible for cleaning inside the ship. He is not particularly pleased with Amber. Upon his arrival, he starts giving orders to everyone. Mike goes about his cleaning duties, and Amber stops him, asking if there is a gym on the ship. Although reluctantly, he agrees, and after a while, he brings a stationary bike for cardio exercise, suggesting Amber can use it. This suggestion upsets Amber, as it reminds her of a past incident where someone made fun of her for the first time. She used her influence and even issued threats to remove the person from their job. However, Mike remains silent, displaying understanding. Later, the group moves to a location slightly away from the ship. During their stay, Amber refuses to drive because she's afraid of water. She asks Mike to accompany her, and upon their return, they all have lunch. However, Amber's haughty behavior continues as she complains about the lunch being too cold and demands it to be reheated. Things escalate, and in frustration, Mike throws the lunch over her, even tossing it into the sea afterward. It turns out to be a misunderstanding, and what seemed like a defiant act was actually Mike's attempt at humor. If he had done anything like that, he could lose his job, and Amber might ruin him. Another incident occurs when there is a problem during Mike's shift. Amber tells him that they need to go fishing, but Mike, understanding the weather conditions, advises against it. However, Amber, determined, insists on getting a small boat for fishing. As they set out on the boat, little did they know that the upcoming days would become unforgettable for them. They reach a spot where they might encounter some fish, but they are unaware of what awaits them. The days ahead will become lasting memories for them. After some time, they finally reach the fishing spot where Mike thinks they could catch some fish. However, Amber encourages him to go further. As they proceed, Mike realizes they've run out of petrol. Despite his attempts to start the boat again, Amber's arrogance prevents them from getting anywhere. Amber learns about this and becomes furious, shouting at Mike. Now, the mistake was entirely Mike's. He should have checked the fuel, but he insists that it's not his fault, it's her fault. He had mentioned earlier that he wasn't feeling right about this journey, and they should go back. However, she didn't listen, and now they have to deal with hunger. Amber wasn't staying silent, so Mike decides to take a break and sits quietly on the side, contemplating. After a while, Amber's anger subsides, and she explains that there's no other way for them. They have to wait for a ship to pass by. They don't even have a paddle on the boat to move a bit away. Now, both of them sit there, waiting for help, but none arrives. They haven't eaten anything for several days. And whatever food Amber brought is long gone. As the days pass, their difficulties increase. One night, during a heavy rainstorm, their small boat gets tossed around, surviving the storm, but now stranded in the middle of the ocean. Both survive, but now, they are stuck between survival and an uncertain fate. They go without food for days, and Amber, frustrated, starts yelling at Mike again. At this moment, a gun falls in front of her. She picks it up, thinking it's just a prop. Mike tries to warn her, but she ignores him. Slowly, air starts escaping, and part of the boat sinks into the water. Well, the troubles for them just got worse. This and the island they were stuck on became even more challenging. Meanwhile, Mike, somewhere on the island, starts finding some useful items. With each passing day, he is getting more accustomed to the place. Initially, he finds nothing, but after a while, he discovers a small hut and some bottles that seem to belong to someone who might have been stranded there before. Now, his stay on the island is somewhat settled. After this, he needs to arrange for his food. Since the sea is nearby, he doesn't have to go far for fishing, but some effort is required. So, he first crafts a makeshift weapon to catch fish and successfully gets a large one. He then starts a fire near his shelter and cooks the fish. The days pass, and Amber and Mike continue their struggle for survival. Amber's arrogance is slowly replaced by a desperation to find food. While Mike, on the other hand, learns to adapt to the challenges of the island, finding ways to sustain himself. Both are now on separate journeys, facing the harsh reality of their situation. Amber spent her entire life in a small room where a snap of her fingers brought everything she desired. However, to survive here, she needs courage and intelligence, which she lacks. The story reveals two aspects: the struggle of a poor man to meet his needs and Amber's dilemma of seeking help, realizing that her previous easy life won't continue. After a long walk, exhausted Amber notices Mike, comfortably eating fish. Despite her envy, hunger forces her to abandon her ego and request food from Mike, who declines, citing he starts to leave, but infuriated, Amber throws mud at him, and Mike can't tolerate it. He gives her a stern slap, stating conditions for food: no disrespect, acknowledgement of his authority, and her commitment to do his chores, including washing clothes and addressing him as master. Forced into submission, Amber accepts, realizing she has no other option. She begins doing all the tasks, but Mike's rude behavior continues. Despite learning to catch fish and starting a fire, Amber faces harsh treatment, with Mike neither allowing her inside nor providing proper food. The island's isolation enforces their interaction, leading to a strained understanding. One day, while fishing, Mike approaches Amber, revealing his genuine love, wanting to prove it, but hesitates, torn between showing his true feelings and maintaining a tough exterior. That everyone has an ego, but it should not be used to belittle others. Amber understands this. Realizing that Mike is not as bad as she perceived, she approaches him, seeking forgiveness. They become good friends, sharing responsibilities and discovering that money isn't everything. Both start living their days well, growing closer. Amber learns that Mike had reasons for his behavior, and he acknowledges her kindness. Over time, Amber's feelings for Mike evolve. One day, she shares her difficult past, explaining her impending divorce and how it had made her bitter. Mike consoles her, and they embark on a new life together. However, while searching for wood one day, Amber spots a cruise ship on the horizon. Amber, who was standing at the shore, decides she might not like the world where only money rules. She chooses to stay, but Mike arrives, calling the cruise staff to pick them up. Amber tries to stop him, stating that she prefers staying ashore. However, Mike insists, saying that she loves him. Amber challenges him to prove it, stating that she's given more proof than anyone else. Despite her hesitation, they embark on the cruise. Later, when Mike repeatedly asks for proof, Amber realizes that if they go to that world, they might change. Despite this, she expresses her love for him, but Mike remains skeptical. When they return, Amber shares the situation with her husband Vicky, who arrives to take her back. Seeing Mike alive, he thanks him for saving his wife. Mike smiles at Amber and leaves, realizing they can't be together. In the end, an associate of Vicky arrives with a bag full of money as a reward for Mike. Acknowledging the life saved, Mike pushes the man away, escaping from the scene. However, the man leaves the bag behind, and when Mike opens it, he finds it filled with money. Taking the bag, he spots a shop with expensive rings. Using the money, Mike decides to buy a ring, signifying his choice to marry Amber. He calls Amber, apologizing, and she responds by saying she's ready for whatever decision he has made. Amber suggests writing a letter in her name and leaving it at the reception of his hotel. Mike agrees and writes a letter, instructing Amber to wait for him as soon as she receives it. The letter indicates that once she collects her belongings and arrives, they will leave everything behind and start a new life together in London. Now, he leaves the letter at the reception, but fate seems to be against him. Early in the morning, before Amber, Vicky arrives at the hotel and notices the letter at the reception. Understanding everything, he realizes the consequences of his actions. At the same time, he tells Amber that they need to leave for New York. She knew that Mike must have written that letter, and she was lost in that thought. After a while, they both sit in a car, and suddenly, a running boy approaches with a letter in his hand, meant for Amber. When she opens it, it turns out to be Mike's letter, stating that he doesn't love her, and whatever happened on the island was just a time pass. Hold on, friends, let's pause here for a moment. This letter, in fact, was not written by Mike but by Vicky. He instructed the boy to give it to Amber, creating an impression that Mike never loved her, and wanted to deceive her. This makes Amber believe that Mike was never truly in love with her, shattering her completely. But wait, the twist is that Mike, unaware of Vicky's actions, believes Amber is leaving for New York. Meanwhile, on the other side, when Mike learns that Amber is leaving, he wants to see her one last time, perhaps to have closure, therefore, he runs towards her, but by then, his love, Amber, had already left. He shouts, screams, but Amber doesn't stop and keeps moving away from his sight. Meanwhile, he throws the ring there, but it lands in the sea. Both of them remain incomplete, and they will live their entire lives trapped in this question, pondering why it happened. So, how did you find their story?